I never thought that a birthday text would end up being the coldest cut of my life. I was sitting at my breakfast table on October 4th, 2025, the same spot where I'd unwrapped decades of bills, blessings, and burdens. My tea had gone lukewarm. I was scrolling through my messages when I saw the name Tina pop up. My daughter-in-law. My late son's widow. She never texted me without a reason, and I had just transferred her $850 the night before for what she'd called gift prep. Her birthday was coming up. She said she needed to make it nice for the baby. I didn't ask questions, I just scheduled the transfer. But this wasn't a thank you. It was a gut punch. Her message read, "The greatest gift would be if you just died." No emoji, no follow-up, just those 11 words, delivered like a slap across the face. My hand froze over the table. The phone screen glowed against the pale morning light slanting through the blinds, and for a long second, I couldn't even process what I'd read. I blinked, read it again, and then, before I could even decide what to do with that cruel, weaponized sentence, a notification pinged. Tina had just posted a reel. A birthday countdown. She was smiling, dancing, spinning in a silk robe with queen energy embroidered on the back. The caption read, "Leveling up. No fake love. No dead weight. 3 days to 32 clinking glasses sparkles." My thumb trembled as I took a screenshot of her text, time-stamped 7:48 a.m. The word "died" hovered above her profile photo, where she posed with my granddaughter, lips glossed and eyes laughing. My stomach turned. It wasn't just the malice of her message. It was the timing, the performance, how she knew I'd see it and counted on me swallowing it. I hadn't missed a single birthday in that woman's life since she married my son Marcus in 2012. I helped her through postpartum anxiety, fed her when Marcus was still finishing his degree, paid off $900 of her dental bills in 2021. But here she was, telling me, in not so many words, that I was no longer useful, that my death would be her relief. Something in me locked up. Not rage. Not yet. Just a cold settling. I opened my banking app and stared at the pending $850. Due to hit at noon, I clicked cancel. For the first time in years, I chose not to give. I chose to stop the bleeding. By the time the sun had climbed over the trees lining Columbia Drive, I had slipped on my old brown USPS jacket, the one from my last route before retirement, and walked out the door without a word. The jacket still carried the scent of paper, heat, and dignity. I used to wear it during rainstorms and funerals, delivering people's overdue bills and sympathy cards with the same care. That morning, it felt like armor. The air was brittle, the way Georgia gets in early October, crisp, but holding the ghost of summer heat. I passed the barber where Marcus got his first lineup, the corner store that sold me powdered creamer by the tub, the vacant lot where the community center used to stand. Each step felt both heavier and lighter than the one before. My phone rang the first time just past the laundromat. Tina. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at the traffic light by that old Pentecostal church with the flaking white paint. Then again 2 blocks later. I didn't answer. I needed the silence more than I needed whatever excuse or venom she had waiting on the other end. When I finally made it back home, heels sore, heart steadier, I sat on the porch with a glass of lemon water, pressed play on the voicemail, and listened. Her voice was syrupy with that weaponized sweetness she used when she wanted something. "Ma, that was real petty. It was just a joke, damn. People joke like that online." "You took it personal? Wow. You always been sensitive, huh?" She laughed at the end. It wasn't a joke. I saved the voicemail. Then I opened my banking app again, refreshed the screen, and watched as the $850 reappeared in my checking account at 12:01 p.m. Something solidified in me at that moment. Not just the decision not to give, but a reclamation of self. I'd spent so long smoothing edges, making myself easier to need. After Marcus passed in 2018, I let Tina become the center of everything because it felt like a way to keep him alive. But in doing so, I'd shrunk myself into a convenience. Now, sitting in my chair beneath a porch light that flickered every few seconds, I knew this wasn't pettiness. It was clarity. She taught me something with that message. Not about herself. I already knew who Tina was, but about me. By evening, I was back in the rhythms I knew. Boiling water for tea, folding the towels with tight hospital corners, and easing into my chair at the kitchen window, where the last gold of the day curled along the sill. The apartment was quiet except for the creak of old floorboards and the soft drum of the washer cycling in the back. I pulled out the mortgage statement I'd received last week and flattened it across the table. 14 payments, $1,210 each, every month since July of last year. Auto-deducted from my region's bank account on the 3rd of each month, just like clockwork. That house Tina was living in, the one she told people was a gift from God on Instagram, God had a routing number, and it was mine. She never asked, not directly. She cried after Marcus died, said she didn't want to uproot their daughter. I offered, and then I just kept offering, until it wasn't even a question anymore. And now she spit on me like my care had come with no cost. The kettle whistled low and steady, and I poured the water over my chamomile blend, hands steady but hollow. I stirred it, staring past my own reflection in the glass pane, trying to remember the last time I did something, anything, that was simply for me. My phone buzzed against the table. One new message from Tina. Thanks for nothing. Beneath it, a Cash App request. $200. Captioned, still need to grab a few things for the party. I didn't respond. I didn't even decline it. I let it sit there, neon and desperate. The tea burned a little going down. I welcomed the sting. I opened my drawer and pulled out the Regions receipt from last month's mortgage payment. I'd saved every one, neatly hole-punched into a binder marked with a single label. Marcus. But this wasn't for him anymore. This was for me. At 8:12 p.m., the phone lit up again. Tina's profile picture, her and the baby at the botanical gardens, beamed out at me. I let it ring twice, then set the phone face down and turned on the lamp above the stove. Later, when Pastor Ray called for our weekly prayer circle, I answered. I didn't bring up Tina. I didn't need to. But when he said, "You sound quieter than usual, sister," I whispered, not quiet, just resting my voice for something bigger. The next morning, I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, thumbing through old photo albums saved to the cloud. Not the ones everyone sees. These weren't curated smiles or holiday centerpieces. These were the in-between moments. Tina at her bridal shower in 2012, standing in my kitchen in that pale peach dress I bought her from Macy's, her eyes wide with gratitude, or something close enough. A grainy photo of me handing her a houseplant at her first apartment in Lithonia, the one I co-signed for when Marcus was just starting at the academy. A spider plant, because it cleans the air, I'd said. Lease documents, texts with heart emojis, photos with arms linked, proof of the years I had given her more than money. She'd been family before she was a mother, before she was a widow, before she became the woman who'd tell me to die on my birthday. But now, I scrolled through to the post she shared the night before, her smiling in front of a bakery box, surrounded by pink balloons. The caption read, "Some people will never support you, even if they share your blood. #JustFacts, #protect your peace." My face flushed. Not from anger, not yet, but from the sharp sting of being rewritten in real time. All those years of standing in the shadows so she could shine, and now I was being recast as the villain in her public story. I screenshot the post, thumb hovering for a second before saving it into the same folder as the lease email from 2017, the one where I'd co-signed for that one bedroom near Emory and paid the first 3 months' rent. That came out to $1,800. Add the security deposit, the furniture I'd picked up from Goodwill, the Target run we did together, easy another $1,200. She'd cried on that move-in day, said she didn't know what she'd do without me. Now she didn't even tag me. A part of me wanted to comment, to remind her how much of her life had been built on my quiet generosity. But another part of me, the one that had begun waking up the morning I canceled that transfer, knew better. This wasn't a fight for a feed. It was a reckoning. I closed the app and opened my notebook. At the top of a blank page, I wrote, Tina, financial. Then I started to count. The dining table creaked as I pulled my laptop toward me, the same one I'd bought Tina in March 2021, when she said her old one kept crashing during Zoom calls. That was $1,200 right there. I opened a fresh spreadsheet, titled it the same as my notebook, and began entering line items with slow, deliberate keystrokes. Rent support, $6,500 from 2017 to 2019. Mortgage assistance since July 2024, $1,210 monthly, 14 payments made, totaling $16,940. I paused, rubbing the ache in my thumb, then resumed. Private school fees for my granddaughter's first year, $5,000 flat. That hadn't even been a request. Just a printed flyer left on my kitchen counter one afternoon during a surprise visit. I wrote the check before dinner was ready. Laptop, $1,200. Car down payment, $5,820. Paid directly to Hyundai of Lithonia in October 2022. I still had the receipt tucked in my tax file under family support. The total at the bottom blinked as I added the final numbers. $28,960. $28,960 since 2020, not counting groceries, gas, or emergencies that came without receipts. I stared at the number for a long moment. It wasn't just a figure. It was the shape of my love. Quiet, consistent, and invisible. It was every skipped vacation, every put-off dental appointment, every dollar I hadn't spent on myself. The ping of a message pulled me back. Tina, again. You're acting weird. You good? I didn't answer. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I copied the spreadsheet into a printable format and saved it to a folder titled Receipts. I moved it beside screenshots of her posts, Cash App requests, and archived lease documents. Each file was dated, labeled, indisputable. The old me, the one who believed silence was grace, would have taken that message as an opening, an olive branch. But grace had become a language Tina couldn't read, and silence had become a weapon she turned against me. She wanted access. She wanted unspoken loyalty. She wanted the faucet to keep running. But now, I was writing it all down. Not for revenge, for clarity. I closed the spreadsheet, stretched my fingers, and folded the ledger shut. It wasn't just the money that brought me here. It was the pattern. And once I started pulling thread, the fabric began to give. I remembered the first off note, subtle as a skipped heartbeat. It was last March, a day like any other. I'd gone to collect the mail from the rusty box at Belvedere Lane, only to find it empty for the third day straight. Odd. I always received something. Flyers, bank statements, utility bills. But that week, nothing. At first, I thought maybe the carrier was off schedule, or maybe someone had stolen it. But when I mentioned it to Tina during a Sunday dinner, she smiled too quickly, too broadly. "Oh, I rerouted it," she said, brushing invisible lint from her sweater. "Just temporary. You kept letting it pile up, and I didn't want anything important to get lost." I should have questioned it, but instead I'd thanked her. That was my mistake. Weeks later, I noticed my Medicare card hadn't arrived. I'd requested a replacement after losing the original. It should have taken 10 business days. It took almost 2 months. When I finally called the USPS hotline, the representative confirmed what I already suspected. "Yes, ma'am. You initiated a forwarding request back in March," she said, "to a P.O. box in Clarkston. My name, my address, but not my hand." I hung up the phone slowly, the silence thick in the apartment. I hadn't initiated anything, and I didn't have a box in Clarkston. I never confronted her. Not then. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. I told myself she meant well. I told myself 1,000 little lies to hold the peace. But that moment lodged itself somewhere deep, dormant and waiting. A dry match, waiting on the strike. Now, looking back with everything cataloged and saved, I understood exactly what that mail reroute had been. A test. Tina wanted to see how far she could reach into my life without resistance. She wanted control, not just over the money, but over the flow of information. She wanted to be the gatekeeper, the interpreter, the editor of my own affairs. And I had let her. But not anymore. I logged onto the USPS website and checked the forwarding status. Inactive now. Canceled in June. Probably once the card finally arrived. Still, I screenshotted the alert. It was time to gather every missing piece. The library smelled like worn paper and pine-scented cleaner, familiar, grounding. I hadn't been inside the Decatur branch in over a year, but it was the only place I trusted with this next step. My home internet had gotten patchy lately, and after what I just remembered about the mail, I wasn't taking any chances with logins from my own devices. Mr. Langston was at the front desk, just like always. Retired Air Force, pressed shirt, tidy mustache. He nodded when he saw me and offered a small smile. "Miss Carter, need help with a terminal?" Just printing a report, I said, though the knot in my stomach told a different story. I logged into my Experian account, heart thudding hard enough to pulse in my fingertips. I hadn't checked my credit in over 6 months. No reason to. I didn't apply for loans. I didn't carry cards. Everything I needed, I paid for in cash or through my checking account. But when the dashboard loaded, I saw it. American Express. Inquiry on file date. September 26th, 2025. It was a hard pull. No card issued. But someone had submitted an application using my information. My mouth went dry. I clicked into the details. The address used was mine. The phone number? Slightly off. 1 digit changed, likely to reroute confirmation calls. I didn't recognize the email address at all. But the name on the inquiry? Tina Carter. I leaned back in the stiff wooden chair, pressed my palms to my lap. My breath came slow and heavy, like it had to make room for this new reality. She had crossed the line. Not just moral, legal. And still, I could hear her voice, cool and casual, saying something like, "It didn't even go through, so what's the big deal?" Mr. Langston noticed the shift in my expression and walked over. "You all right?" "I need to print this," I said quietly, motioning to the screen. He nodded and helped me navigate to the print queue. The machine in the corner sputtered, then spit out 2 pages, my credit report summary, and the full Amex inquiry record. "Keep your originals," he said, sliding them into a manila folder. "Always good to have paper." I thanked him, holding that folder like it might shatter if I squeezed too hard. The curtains stayed drawn all day on October 8th. The sunlight filtering through them came in soft and dust-filled, but I didn't open them. I didn't want Tina, or anyone else, seeing what I was about to do. I sat cross-legged on the couch, laptop balanced on a tray table, and logged into the mortgage portal. It still used Marcus's old password structure, the one I'd never changed out of habit. His birthday, then the year we bought our first house. But once I was in, I went straight to the settings and initiated a password reset. New credentials. Complex. Unique. Then I navigated to the account access panel and paused. 3 devices had logged in this month. One was mine, obviously, this laptop. The second was an old iPhone I hadn't used since last Christmas. The third? An Android. Logged in from a Decatur IP address. Logged in every 2 or 3 days for the past year. I clicked Revoke Access. The system asked if I was sure. I didn't hesitate. Yes. Then I changed the portal's 2-factor authentication to a new number. Mine and mine alone. Within minutes, my phone vibrated. A text from Tina. "Why can't I see the house info anymore?" I stared at the screen for a beat, then powered the phone off. The room went still. For the first time since Marcus's funeral, I felt alone in the best possible way. No invisible eyes looking over my digital shoulder. No ghost fingers rifling through the locks of my accounts. No more pretending she didn't know the balance of my life down to the cent. Later that afternoon, I called Regions Bank and asked to speak with someone from IT security. A woman named Monica answered. Her voice was brisk but kind. "I'm seeing multiple logins, ma'am," she said after a brief hold. "Looks like someone accessed your mortgage portal from a device in Decatur, not the one you're using now." "I've changed the login," I told her, "and revoked all previous access." "Smart move," she replied. "We'll flag the account for suspicious activity and monitor it going forward. Anything else today?" "No," I said, gripping the phone a little tighter. "That'll be enough." When I hung up, I sat in the dim hush of my apartment, the curtains still closed, and exhaled. She no longer had keys, digital or otherwise. By October 10th, I had rehearsed my silence so long it had begun to feel like strength. But silence wasn't always the best weapon. Sometimes you needed the right words at the right time, words she wouldn't recognize as a line being drawn until the ink had already dried. So I sent her a card. Not digital, not a text, a real, printed birthday card, soft blue with silver lettering, "Happy early birthday" on the front. Inside I wrote, "Let's talk soon. Wishing you peace." No check enclosed, no gift, just enough warmth to keep her from seeing the chill behind it. I dropped it in the metal slot at the 2nd Avenue post office just after 3 p.m. I even stood for a moment, hands still on the edge of the drop box, feeling the absurdity of mailing a peace offering to someone who had trespassed in every way but physically. By 7:17 p.m. she called. "Ma," she said, her voice honeyed, lazy. "That your card? That was sweet. I'm glad you came to your senses." I let her talk. Let her stretch out her satisfaction like a cat in the sun. She spoke about the birthday brunch, how excited she was to wear her new dress, how the decorator needed payment soon. "I'm thinking soft lilacs and metallics," she said. "Real generational wealth vibes, you know." I murmured. That seemed to satisfy her. The conversation drifted into false ease. She told me the baby had started saying full sentences, that she'd send a clip to my old email. She never asked why the money hadn't come. She assumed it would, now that I'd folded, and maybe that's what made it so perfect. Her comfort. Her complete misread of my silence as submission. I saved the call recording. Georgia's one-party consent law made it legal. Titled the file, October 10, call softening.mp3. It wasn't the truth that would shake her. It would be the trail. Every call, every receipt, every polite lie I let her believe. Because that's what she expected. Quiet compliance, a return to normal. She didn't know I'd already spoken with Melanie. She didn't know what was coming. Let her lean into her confidence. Let her walk into that birthday brunch thinking the stage was hers. I'd already bought the folder. And this time, it wouldn't hold a check. October 11th opened with overcast skies and the smell of rain in the wind. I pulled into the small brick plaza in Avondale Estates and parked in front of Cross and Minter Law. Melanie's office sat just above a coffee shop, tucked behind a row of flowering crepe myrtles that hadn't yet surrendered their last pink petals. The same firm had handled my husband's estate 6 years earlier. Back then, Melanie Cross had worn sensible heels and a cardigan embroidered with her initials. Now she wore her hair in tight braids and dressed like someone who knew the exact value of her time. "Mrs. Carter." She greeted me, her tone warm but measured. "Come on in." I sat across from her desk and placed the folder between us. "I need to update some things," I said, "and revoke others." She opened her leather-bound intake notebook. "Talk to me." I told her everything, methodically, not just about the credit inquiry and mortgage access, but about the money trail I'd documented, the forwarded mail, the manipulations subtle and otherwise. She took notes, never once interrupting. Her pen moved in short, decisive strokes. "Has she ever had power of attorney?" Melanie asked. "Yes. Temporary. Marcus set it up back in 2019 during my surgery. It was supposed to expire that year, but I trailed off, already knowing the mistake. We'll terminate it officially," she said. "I'll draft a revocation today. We'll also update your beneficiary designations and set financial protections moving forward. You're not legally obligated to fund anyone's lifestyle, no matter the relationship." I nodded, throat tight. "And you'll want to document your intent clearly. I recommend a formal letter of financial disassociation. We can notarize it, seal it, and deliver it if needed." Needed. The word hung in the air like a gavel already halfway down. As we reviewed the intake notes together, I felt something shift, not in the air, but in me. It wasn't rage, not even grief anymore. It was resolve, the kind that grew roots, the kind that didn't flinch. Melanie looked up. "You're doing the right thing." "I know," I said. Before I left, I handed her a printed timeline. Each payment, each form, each incident marked. I'd labeled it Phase 1. She smiled faintly. "Then let's begin Phase 2. By October 12th, I was done moving quietly. That morning, I drove to Georgia's own credit union with my binder on the passenger seat and a sealed envelope in my purse. I walked in just after opening, the smell of fresh carpet glue still clinging to the air. The branch manager, Mr. Bird, recognized me from years ago when I'd refinanced Marcus's student loan. He greeted me with a nod. "How can I help today, Ms. Carter?" "I'd like to open a new account," I said, placing my identification and binder on his desk, "and close the old one completely." He studied the paperwork, glancing at the ledger I'd printed, summary sheets with labels like mortgage transfers, family loans, unauthorized access. "I see," he said carefully. "Moving everything?" "Everything," I replied. He didn't ask for details, just gestured for me to sit, pulled up the forms, and got to work. I watched him enter the account closure request for my old region's checking. transferring $5,850 into a new savings, and another $6,000 withdrawn in cash. The rest went into a fresh checking account, PIN protected, with no online access until I requested it personally. He pushed the withdrawal receipt toward me. "You sure you want that much in cash?" "I'm sure." Tina's next move came exactly 30 minutes later. My phone, now silenced, still lit up with her text. "Just got an NSF notice. What's going on? Where's the decorator check?" I didn't answer. Instead, I signed the final form, took my receipt copies, and shook Mr. Bird's hand. He met my eyes directly, not with pity, but with a quiet nod of approval. "Make sure you notify anyone who used to have access," he said. "You're the only signer now." "I plan to," I said, though she'd find out soon enough. Back at home, I removed the key box from the porch and slipped the new debit card into a drawer marked "Private." The old card I cut in half. I swept the pieces into a Ziploc bag and tossed them into the locked bin outside. Inside, I tucked the cash into a fireproof envelope and slid it under the floorboard panel in the back closet, where Marcus once kept his baseball cards. It wasn't fear that made me hide it. It was certainty. A storm was coming, and I no longer intended to be caught exposed. The next day, I took a bus down to Candler Road, binder tucked under my arm like a holy book. Kinko's was half empty, just the hum of printers and the faint whir of a laminator in the back. I like that. No chatter, no distractions. Just the sound of documentation becoming concrete. Jasmine, the copy clerk, wore gold hoops and an air of quiet efficiency. "Need full sets or partial?" "Full," I said, laying out the contents. Everything dated and tabbed. She opened the binder carefully. Page 1. Co-sign agreement for Tina's first lease, 2017. Page 2. Region's auto debit authorization for her mortgage. Page 3. Cash App transfers, screenshots of urgent texts. Each file was labeled by year, color-coded with sticky flags. Tina's name appeared on over 35 pages, sometimes printed on lease documents, sometimes signed, sometimes hidden behind cheerful messages that read, "You're a real one, Ma. Couldn't do this without you." "Whew," Jasmine murmured. "That's a lot." I didn't respond, just nodded. She worked in silence, scanning, printing, hole punching. Occasionally she asked, "1 or 2 copies of this one?" I always said 2. By 1:15 p.m., she handed me a fresh black binder. Thick, sealed, 37 pages exactly. I ran my hand along the smooth cover before opening it. Title page, T. Carter Financial Record, 2018 to 2025. I slipped a printed screenshot of the Amex credit inquiry in the front pocket, along with the mail forwarding alert and the Regions Bank login report from Monica. Everything in one place. Jasmine leaned forward. "You want anything notarized?" I hesitated, then pulled 3 pages from the back sleeve, the 2019 POA, the 2021 debt acknowledgement note. Tina scribbled on a napkin and texted to me, and the envelope receipt I'd found for the school fees. Not legal documents on their own, but enough to be verified as mine. "Yes," I said. "These." She returned with a stamp and seal. Click, press, sign. Dated October 13th, 2025. It wasn't revenge, I felt, as I slid the binder back into my tote. It was order. Like I had finally brought the scattered pieces of my life into one room and told them to sit still. Outside, the sky was still overcast, but the light had changed, clearer, sharper. It wasn't justice yet, but it was proof. Sunday came with the smell of warm bread and polished wood. Faithbridge AME's fellowship hall always had a way of holding quiet better than any sanctuary. After service, I stayed behind while most folks filed out for fried chicken and lemonade. Pastor Ray Dobson waited near the front table, his Bible still open, thumb resting lightly on a passage about threshing floors. "You said you wanted to talk," he said, motioning me to sit. I didn't waste time. I opened my tote and slid the envelope across the table. Inside, the revocation letter Melanie had prepared, the notarized POA termination, and a draft of the financial boundary notice we'd decided to deliver formally. Everything was labeled, tabbed, dated. He read the top page slowly, his expression unreadable. Halfway through, he let out a low breath. "You've been carrying this alone." I nodded. Pastor Ray took his glasses off and folded them between his palms. "Do you want me to witness the delivery?" "I want you and Melanie both," I said. "And I want it to happen in public. No more whispered backroom shames." He didn't blink. "You know that will leave a mark. It won't be a clean break." "It already isn't," I said. "But I want it documented, clear, not just for her, but for me." Melanie joined us 10 minutes later, fresh from a probate consult upstairs. Her expression tightened as she flipped through the binder again. "I'll add a witness signature page," she said. "We'll formalize the disassociation. Do you want it hand-delivered or revealed with context?" "With context," I said. "And timing." Her birthday brunch. Bistro 212. October 18th, 12:30 p.m. Melanie raised an eyebrow. "Ballsy." "I've been called worse," I replied. Pastor Ray smiled faintly. "I'll be there." He stood and placed his palm over the sealed envelope. Not a blessing, exactly, but a kind of anchoring. "She's not going to understand this," he said. "Not right away." "She doesn't have to," I replied. "She just has to see it." We finalized the logistics. Who would speak? Who would carry what? Who would record, if needed? No surprises. No violence. Just truth, bound in black vinyl and signed in blue ink. By the time we parted, the hall had emptied. Just the hum of an old soda machine in the corner and the echo of a woman reclaiming her name. I made the reservation at Bistro 212 on a Monday morning under my full name, Evelyn Carter, table for 6, 12:30 p.m. sharp, October 18th. The hostess confirmed it with cheerful formality, unaware of what the occasion would actually hold. "Any special notes?" she asked. "Yes," I said, calm and deliberate. "One of the guests will be presented with legal documents. Please have the check split in advance and the waitstaff briefed that we'll need a few extra minutes after dessert. Quiet table, far corner." She didn't ask questions. I emailed the confirmation to both Melanie and Pastor Ray. Attached the brunch invitation Tina had sent me last week. Glittery font over a peach background. Grown woman energy. Tina's 32nd. "Come dressed in pastels and bring good vibes. Only 2 heart sparkles." I printed it, folded it neatly, and placed it into the same folder as the revocation letter. On Wednesday, Tina texted, "So glad you're coming. Make sure you bring the key. I want to show the decorator how the front room looks in daylight." The key. Not if, I had decided. Not, "Would you mind?" Just assumed possession. I stared at her message for a long moment before replying. "I'll bring what's needed." She sent a heart emoji. I didn't return one. The rest of the week moved slow and surgical. I double-checked every document, reprinted the binder summary page with updated totals, packed it all into a sleek black envelope. Not flashy, just sharp. Tina liked to perform wealth. I intended to show her what actual accountability looked like. Friday, I laid out my outfit. A navy blouse, my grandmother's silver cuff bracelet, and a fresh-pressed pair of slacks. No pastel, no performative softness. Just clean lines and a body that had earned every right to take up space. Melanie texted Friday evening, "Ready on my end, notarized and certified. I'll bring 2 witness forms in case she tries to contest." Pastor Ray followed with a simple, "Confirmed. Sunday message will be shorter, so I'm not late. Let her dance first." That made me smile. Let her dance. Let her toast. Let her believe the room belongs to her. I didn't need an audience to be right. I just needed a table. And once the documents were down, there would be no more shifting storylines, no more emotional rewrites. The restaurant shimmered with brunch polish, white linen, stemmed glasses catching late October sunlight through high windows. Soft jazz pulsed from overhead speakers, some Ella Fitzgerald rendition of Sweetness and Denial. At precisely 12:28 p.m., I stepped through the doors with my envelope in hand and clarity in my chest. Tina was already there, radiant in a blush pink jumpsuit, lashes curled, smile broad and curated. She stood at the head of the table like a host on a stage, arms open, voice bright enough to carry. "There she is," she called, "the queen herself." I kissed her cheek lightly, set the envelope in my lap beneath the cloth napkin. Melanie arrived seconds behind me, professional in slate gray. Pastor Ray took his seat with a nod. The decorator, and a friend of Tina's, a local stylist I'd seen tagged online but never met, rounded out the six. Menus opened. Mimosas ordered. Tina dominated the conversation with practiced charm, detailing plans for a brand reset and how every woman at 32 should claim her narrative. Her voice was honeyed, her tone lifted, but beneath it, I caught flickers of control, sharp glances, the kind that remind people whose spotlight it is. Then, just after our entrees arrived, mine, eggs Florentine, untouched, she pulled out a crisp manila folder of her own. "I almost forgot," she said sweetly, turning to me. "I had Darnell bring something for us to sign. It's just a deed transfer form. Makes taxes easier if everything's in my name. That way, no confusion in the future." She slid the folder across the table with theatrical ease. "Sign it now. It's simple. Gift of property. It protects all of us." The table stilled. I opened the folder. Inside, a Georgia deed transfer form, blank signature line, Tina's name printed neatly as sole grantee. A notary slip rested on top. Her friend Darnell apparently prepared to witness it right there. I closed the folder without touching a pen. Melanie leaned forward slightly. "Tina, did you bring this document expecting to finalize a legal property transfer at lunch?" Tina's smile tightened. "It's not that deep. We're family. This was already agreed on." "No," I said calmly. "It wasn't." She blinked, confused for the first time. "I thought we were in a good place." I placed my hand on the envelope in my lap and looked her dead in the eye. "We are. That's why it's time for clarity." The envelope was warm from my lap. The paper inside weighted with something heavier than ink. I placed it gently on the tablecloth and slid it forward, letting my fingers rest on the seal just long enough to still the tremor that wanted to surface. "I brought something too," I said. Tina blinked. Her confidence, so intact just moments ago, flickered as if the air had shifted. She tried to laugh, soft and performative. "What's this, Ma? A card? You're not mad about the decorator thing, are you?" I broke the seal. No flourish, no pause for drama. Inside was the 37-page dossier. Financial records, payment receipts, the credit report from Experian, the forwarding notice from USPS, screenshots of her messages, the binder summary page labeled total $33,400, 2018 to 2025. On top, Melanie's notarized revocation of power of attorney, the formal letter ending all financial entanglements, and a single typed sentence that read, "Effective today, all financial ties between Evelyn Carter and Tina Carter are severed." I passed the folder across the table, slow and deliberate. Tina's hand hovered before she took it. She opened it without ceremony, scanning the first few pages, flipping, then freezing. Her voice when it came was low and sharp. "What is this supposed to be?" "The record," I said, calm as pressed linen, "of everything you've taken, everything I've allowed, and everything that stops as of now." She flipped again, mouth tightening. "You kept track of this, seriously? This is insane." "No," Melanie said quietly, hands folded on her lap. "It's legal and binding." Tina looked to Pastor Ray, seeking refuge. "She's trying to humiliate me." He didn't offer it. "She's presenting the truth, Tina, in front of witnesses, as she should." Darnell, the notary Tina had brought, looked between us, unsure. His pen was still in hand, but now it trembled slightly. Tina set the folder down harder than needed, the slap of paper hitting cloth, jolting the air. Her lips parted, then closed. Words had always been her currency, but in that moment she was broke. "This isn't love," she muttered. "No," I said. "It's boundary." She stood slowly, the performance unraveling in real time. But I didn't flinch. At 12:53 p.m., Tina Carter saw herself, not the version she sold online, but the reflection found in paper, ledger, and truth. And she didn't like it. Silence clung to the table like fog, the kind that dulls silverware and thickens air. Tina stood rigid, arms crossed over her chest, lips pressed tight. Her pastel-clad guests glanced between her and the black binder like it might bite. Pastor Ray reached forward and turned the summary page so it faced him. He cleared his throat, his voice steady, deliberate. $33,400 in unacknowledged support. He read aloud. Given over the course of 4 years. Documented, dated, and now revoked. His voice was not unkind, but it left no room for interpretation. Tina flinched. "You make it sound like a bill," she snapped. "It's a boundary," Melanie responded, her gaze unwavering. "Not a collection notice. A declaration of conclusion." Tina looked at me then, really looked, as if searching my face for some scrap of the woman who used to soften at her smallest wounds. But I wasn't bending anymore. I held her gaze, calm as stone. "Why now?" she asked. "Why here?" I gestured to the pink balloons curling at the edge of our tablecloth, the untouched mimosa sweating beside her untouched plate. "Because you love a moment," I said. She let out a sharp laugh, brittle. "This is abuse." The word landed like a thrown dish, loud, intended to scatter. Pastor Ray didn't move. "No, daughter. This is protection, and we are witnesses." Tina shoved her chair back, the legs scraping sharp against tile. Her napkin hit the floor. "You're all just bitter," she hissed. "You couldn't stand that I finally started doing for myself." "You started taking," I said quietly, "without asking, without consequence." She scoffed, turned to the decorator, then to Darnell, hoping for some echo of loyalty. But neither followed. No one spoke. She left in a blur of perfume and wounded pride, her heels clipping too fast across the floor. The door closed behind her with a hiss of tempered glass. For a moment, the table stayed still. Then Melanie reached for the witness form and passed it to Pastor Ray. He signed first. The notary added his stamp, still seated, still stunned. 2 restaurant staff members approached, eyes wide. "Would you mind signing here?" Melanie asked, professional even in victory. "Just confirming presence during a legal notice." They nodded quickly. At 1:05 p.m., the receipts were no longer just mine. They were seen, confirmed, sealed. By the time I returned to Windsor Grove that evening, the sky had slipped into dusk, the kind of fading blue that felt neither forgiving nor cruel, just final. I parked beneath the flickering lot lamp, climbed the stairs with the envelope pressed flat against my chest, and unlocked the door to a home that, for the first time in years, felt untouched by someone else's reaching hands. Inside, I removed the old chain lock and installed the new one I'd picked up from Ace Hardware. The locksmith invoice, $185, rush call, rekeyed front and back, slid into the same binder pocket as the deed form Tina had once tried to force across the brunch table. Paper for paper, I stood for a long while in the hallway after changing the locks, the scent of fresh metal mixing with the lavender from the wall plug. A strange quiet had settled, one not born of tension, but release. No more phantom footsteps. No more wondering if the door had been opened in my absence, if documents had been shifted, drawers rifled. Just my breath, my keys, my home. I stepped out onto the porch, new set jingling in my palm, and sat on the cracked wicker chair Marcus had once reinforced with copper wire. Above me, the porch light buzzed softly. Inside, the phone buzzed louder. Tina. Her name, one last time, across the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. Then the message came through. "You'll regret this. No pleading now. No theatrics. Just threats stripped of its performance." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the contacts, scrolled down, and selected Block Caller. A confirmation prompt blinked. I pressed yes. Afterward, I took a screenshot of the message and the blocked confirmation, saved both into a new folder titled Final, labeled with the date, October 18th, 2025. Time, 7:42 p.m. Then I opened a new thread addressed to the Windsor Grove HOA and attached a photo of the locksmith's receipt. The subject line read, Restricted Access Notice, Unit 3C. At the end, I added, Please note, Tina Carter is no longer authorized to enter or request information about this property. I pressed send. Then I leaned back, feeling the weight shift for good. The door was locked, the file was closed, and I was free, holding not just keys, but the final word.